Hey friends, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we're going to break down some news that you need to know about. But before we do that, I want to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com to get all of our latest content, articles, interviews, essays, blogs, reports, what have you. Also want to ask you guys to follow us on minds.com/theconsciousresistance-network and remind you that we have launched the Divest from Facebook campaign. And if you are not following us on Minds, well, then you're missing out on some of our work already, because we have put out a couple of exclusive reports already that are just for Minds. I've got an article out right now that you won't see anywhere else for the next few days. Right there, Minds exclusive. San Francisco could be the first U.S. city to ban facial recognition software. And if you want to find more about that, then you need to go visit us on Minds. And I will have another Minds exclusive video coming out as well. So get plugged in there. But let's go ahead and check out the news. Former U.S. government analyst faces 50 years in prison for allegedly leaking classified drone warfare documents. Daniel Hale, 31, is accused of leaking classified documents to an unnamed media outlet. In the latest crackdown against government leaks by the Trump administration, a former NSA official has been charged with giving classified documents on drone warfare to a journalist. Daniel Hale, 31, is accused of leaking classified documents to an unnamed media outlet. It has been reported that the files described appear to match those published by the Intercept, which was, of course, founded by Glenn Greenwald and others in order to promote and disseminate the Edward Snowden leaks. The Intercept has refused to comment on its sourcing, but released a statement condemning the indictment of Hale, saying, quote, "Following in the dangerous path of the Obama administration, the Trump administration is continuing to use the Espionage Act to prosecute whistleblowers who enable journalists to uncover disgraceful, immoral, and unconstitutional acts committed in a secret by the U.S. government. We stand firmly opposed to all such prosecutions." Now, it has been reported that Hale met a reporter at an event and soon after began searching for documents on topics that the reporter wrote on. The two established a relationship over several months related to the documents, corresponding via text and email, sometimes using an encrypted messaging service called Jabber, sometimes going for dinner. Now, it's important to note when you hear things like that, whenever they caught this whistleblower and they were noting that he was using Jabber, which I don't know if people still use Jabber, but I definitely remember Jabber being around. And, I think this is a clue that perhaps these things we think might be encrypted are not really so encrypted. I had some lessons like that whenever I was reporting on the Silk Road trial, and I realized how much information they have. Even if you delete a comment or a post on Facebook, they still got access to it. Hale had previously served as an intelligence analyst while an enlisted airman in the U.S. Air Force from 2009 to 2013, and later as a contractor for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, at which time he possessed security clearance. He has been indicted by a grand jury on 5 counts regarding the leak, each count carrying a maximum of sentence of 10 years. So he could face up to 50 plus years in prison, depending on what they give him. And here's the statement from the Intercept, just basically repeating what you just heard, condemning the act. And they say, though, "We do not comment on matters relating to the identity of sources." So although it seems clear or potential that this source, the outlet they were speaking to, was the Intercept, because if you may remember this, the drone papers, which were released back in 2013 or so, and this really did give us a kind of better picture of what was going on. The fact that the Obama administration and now the Trump administration and now every president that comes to pass has a presidential kill list, what is known as the disposition matrix. The Intercept obtained a cache of secret documents detailing the inner workings of the U.S. military's assassination program in Afghanistan, Yemen, and Somalia. These documents, provided by a whistleblower, offer an unprecedented glimpse into Obama's drone wars. So, again, pretty groundbreaking stuff at the time, leaked by someone. And now the Intercept, of course, they're not going to admit that this was their source. It seems to be the case. This guy, 31 years old, is now going to potentially be in prison till he's 80 years old. And it's sad. I want to take 2 angles on this. First, fuck the government, because, well, people who are out there exposing them, thank you. There are people like Chelsea Manning and even Edward Snowden and different people who, look, I know that there's controversy about these people, about whether or not they're legitimate, whether or not they're limited hangouts or psyops and things like that. We'll address that in just a moment. But let's just take it at surface the surface level, face value. That this is a whistleblower, somebody for whatever reason who felt inclined to share information about what they were seeing to the public. That's pretty badass. That takes courage. How many of you out there have balls or ovaries that would be willing to do that? I've met a few people over the years who told me, oh, I used to work for an intelligence contractor or for military contractors, and eventually it was just too much for me, and I had to leave. I couldn't do it anymore. Props to you. You guys are freaking awesome. But not everybody has that courage, and that sucks, but it's the reality. So when somebody does step forward and reveal something, like, yeah, we got to give them props. We got to raise awareness about it and talk about it because it's important. And that's what matters. And now this guy, Daniel Hale, who we haven't seen a picture of yet, he might end up spending, the rest of his life behind bars for choosing to leak information that some of us in the journalistic activist community care about, but maybe the average American still doesn't even know about this. I guarantee you, if I went out to the streets today in Houston and did some man on the street interviews and asked people if they know that the president has a drone assassination list, they would not know what the fuck I'm talking about. People would just be like, what are you talking about? I mean, you get it. So it's a good act that happened, and it's unfortunate that more people don't know. But let's look at the other angle. This is not the first time that the Intercept has had a source get locked up. You guys ever seen this article? Really great article by Whitney Webb at Mint Press News. The Intercept source burning problem. With its outing of an anonymous NSA source, the online publication, The Intercept, is finding itself in hot water. And this is related to Reality Winner, who allegedly gave The Intercept classified NSA documents related to an investigation of Russian military intelligence hacking within the U.S. This happened right at the beginning of the Trump administration, and she locked up. I can't remember what they sentenced her to, or how it ended up unfolding. But John Kirikow, who you guys may remember was also a CIA whistleblower, he actually called out The Intercept. The Intercept should be ashamed of itself. Matthew Cole burns yet another source. It makes your entire organization untrustworthy. And he singled out Cole as having not only misled him, but having played a likely role in incriminating him. John Kirikow, of course, he released information about CIA torture, I believe, in just different programs. And he spent nearly 2 years, nearly 2 years in prison for exposing this program. And he believes it was The Intercept that helped get him arrested. WikiLeaks has sharply condemned The Intercept's role in Reality Winner's arrest. Julian Assange at the time wrote, quote, "If the FBI affidavit is correct, the reporter concerned must be named, shamed, and fired by whomever they work for to maintain industry standards. Source-burning reporters are a menace. They chill trust in all journalists, which impedes public understanding." And WikiLeaks was offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to public exposure and termination of the potential reporter. And The Intercept responded saying, while the FBI's allegations against Winner have been made public through the release of an affidavit, it is important to keep in mind that these documents contain unproven assertions. Winner faces allegations that have not been proven. And Glenn Greenwald, who's distanced himself from the article and claimed that he does not edit the paper, basically says, "I didn't write the article. I don't edit The Intercept. I don't control other journalists. My views on it are here. Journalism requires that documents be published and reported. Rationality requires it be read skeptically." And then it gets a little bit deeper into who The Intercept is and Pierre Amidar and how he, this billionaire who is involved with eBay and PayPal helped fund The Intercept and get them going. And basically it gets a little further, talking about how they outed a source to potentially perpetuate the Russian hacker narrative, which still to this day hasn't been proven 2 years later, despite the Mueller report. And you guys may have seen this report from my friend James Corbett and Media Monarchy. Glenn Greenbacks completes the Edward Snowjob, where they talk about how Edward Snowden the Intercept has said that they are shelving closing the Edward Snowden files because they just don't have enough money, even though, as I mentioned, they are being funded by this billionaire back here. They claim they don't have enough money to keep the Edward Snowden files open. So Edward Snowden, let's imagine Edward Snowden is who he says he is. I know some of you think otherwise, but let's imagine he is a leaker who left the country and he trusted the different outlets to distribute the information, and they didn't. And instead, now they're holding on to it and they're claiming they don't have enough money to even keep the archives open because that is just too much for them. And so we'll never know the truth of what Edward Snowden really tried to reveal. Now, it's also possible that Edward Snowden's part of the con, and so is Glenn Greenwald, and so are these other people. Generally, I think Glenn Greenwald and Jeremy Scahill and some of the other people at The Intercept do better work than the mainstream, but that doesn't mean that we know the full picture. And then I'll remind you guys, I'll show you this. This is an old school video with Derrick Broze right there back in July 2014 when I don't know what the hell is going on with my facial hair. But I asked this question, what are Glenn Greenwald's intentions? Because even at that time, Glenn Greenwald was already being sketchy. So check this out. Glenn Greenwald was supposedly going to release the names of Americans who are being specifically targeted by the NSA spying program. But then all of a sudden, Glenn Greenwald went back on Twitter and said that it wasn't going to happen because of some type of pressure coming from the government. So what we have here is Glenn Greenwald working with Edward Snowden to release information about the NSA spying programs, and then promising to release a list of names being targeted by the NSA, then backing away from those claims and saying for whatever reason he couldn't do that. And then we have the website cryptome.org stepping in and saying, actually, we're going to release all those names and all the rest of the documents in July to avert some type of war. Cryptome.org is a very good website for all type of documents, so I wouldn't expect them to just play around with this type of news. So on one hand, Glenn Greenwald promising to release documents from Ed Snowden. On the other hand, former whistleblowers who have revealed a lot of the information that Snowden has talked about in the past years went to Germany to talk about the totalitarian NSA spying. And then we have a security expert saying, oh, well, by the way, if you use Tor, these programs that are designed to keep you anonymous on the internet, you're already on some kind of extremist list. And we believe this is probably coming from a second whistleblower. So lots of news going on in the NSA spying world. And I know there's plenty of people out there who accuse Glenn Greenwald and Edward Snowden of being some type of agents or controlled opposition or limited hangouts, and saying Drake and Benny have already released this information, and if you've been paying attention then you wouldn't be surprised by this. And I agree with all that. But at the same time, what I know as a journalist reporting on this is that I didn't know the specific names of the programs that they were using to spy on us. I didn't know to what extent. So I think there is new information, and at the same time, people who are speculating, which seem to be Sibel Edmonds, Webster Tarpley, I think even James Corbett, who I respect, they're all speculation. I don't see any valuable, reasonable, tangible evidence, and yes, I'm somewhat of a conspiracy theorist, so I'm willing to go on faith alone sometimes, but I really think that we might be reaching what is the ultimate goal if Edward Snowden or Glenn Greenwald are controlled opposition or limited hangouts. Let me know in the comments below. Yeah, so those are still kind of my same thoughts there, that, you know, it's definitely possible. It seems more likely over time that with now that the Intercept burning sources from Reality Winner, potentially burning John Kirikow, and now this new whistleblower, I mean, it seems like some strange coincidence that everybody who is leaked documents, I don't want to say everybody, but several people who leaked documents have been related to the Intercept end up getting arrested and caught. And, you know, maybe that's just showing you the power of the NSA, that they have access to everything. So even if you think you're safely leaking something, they're going to come after you eventually. Or maybe the Intercept is a honeypot to catch people, to catch whistleblowers. Maybe the whole reason that they released the Snowden documents was to build trust and faith in certain people so that other whistleblowers would come forward and then they could be caught and arrested by the U.S. government. At this point, it's all speculation, but what we do know is that this man, Daniel Hale, is going to prison one way or the other. And unless that whole thing is a unless that whole thing is just a complete lie, then what we do know is at the end of the day, real people will suffer. And I think that's what's important to remember when we get caught up in some of our theorizing, is that at the end of the day, this is bad for press freedom. This is bad for freedom in general. Even if the whole thing's a psyop, honeypot, controlled opposition, limited hangout, it's still going to end up bad for those of us who are real people. So even if they're all actors, all involved with it, the rest of us are still getting fucked. Yeah. That's what I got for today, guys. Please, please, please do go to minds.com/The Conscious Resistance Network. Check out my latest article. I've worked hard on that. I got a new video coming out for you as well. And you can get plugged into all that good stuff. And until next time, please do follow us at theconsciousresistance.com and tune in for our Friday night live show this evening. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.